Hey everybody, welcome back to AWS What's Next. If you're just tuning in, this is your opportunity to learn more about services we launched here at reInvent. And in this session, we'll be talking about Amazon SageMaker Clarify. To tell you all about SageMaker Clarify, what it is, and how it can help detect bias, and so on. We have Krishna here. Krishna, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sashank. Hi, everyone. My name is Krishnaram Kentapedi. I'm a principal scientist at Amazon AWS AI, leading our efforts on topics such as fairness, explainability, and privacy in machine learning. Today, I'm really excited to discuss more about Amazon SageMaker Clarify, which we just launched.
Awesome. Welcome, Krishna. So glad to have you here. I think it's more important than ever to discuss this topic, and detecting bias and explaining model predictions is so important. And I know we'll talk a lot more about Amazon SageMaker Clarify. But to start with, could you tell us what are some of the challenges that data scientists face as they are one training and also when models are in production? What are some of the challenges they face with explainability and bias today?
Sure. So they face challenges with respect to both bias and explainability. Let me start with bias. The data scientists and other machine learning practitioners want to understand, are there biases in different stages of the machine learning pipeline? Are there biases in the data? Are there imbalances in the data sets? Are there biases that are introduced during model training? Are there biases that can occur once the model has been deployed in production?
Mm,
For example, due to changes in real world conditions. Similarly, they also want to understand about how the model behaves as a whole.
mm,
How can they understand if the model is the predictions that the model is making is free from bias? Why did the model make a specific prediction? And what can say users do to get different predictions if they want? What
mm.
features were most important for the model prediction and so on?
I think this is such an interesting topic because, as you mentioned, it's a nuanced topic. There are different stages in the machine learning workflow, and it's important to think about this. And as you mentioned, in the data stage, in the training stage, in the deployment stage, this is such an interesting topic. So, what have customers been doing today? How are they addressing this challenge? What have you heard from our customers asking us for tools to help address this challenge?
So today, the customers are facing these from a few different angles.
Mm,
They are interested in such tools from first from a regulatory angle.
mm,
They want to understand and whether their machine learning models are complying with various regulations.
mm.
How to make sure that the model is not having any biases which are perhaps not known easily. How to make sure that it's meeting various regulations
Mm,
requiring absence of any discrimination based on different attributes and so forth. That's one. Second, they're also interested from a business or operational angle.
mm,
How to provide explanations of the behavior of the trained models, as well as
mm,
how the deployed models make predictions. This can help enhance trust, help improve the understanding of the model to anyone using the model. For example, a loan officer who is making use of a machine learning model for lending decisions and
mm,
so forth. Right. The third is, even from a data science angle, the data scientists often want to understand which features are most important, how to come up with better features. Is the model relying on incorrect data or incorrect features? Are there drifts once the model has been deployed? Are there any issues that arise in feature pipelines or in data sets over time? Is there degradation of the model quality or the model performance? Are there some do some features become less important or more important over time and so forth? So this is kind of,
mm,
these are some of the three dimensions that data scientists are caring about today: regulatory, business, and also from a data science or model improvement angle. So you're asking about what are they doing today. So today there are a few different open source tools,
Mm,
libraries, packages, and so forth for both for bias as well as explainability. But the challenge is that there are a few challenges. First, the data scientist has to figure out what of several different metrics to use for
mm,
biases. Then the data scientist has similarly has to figure out how to integrate such tools, open source packages into their code, their model training code or the model prediction code. Uh, in other words, they have to take care of all the heavy lifting. They have to take care of
right,
writing code, integrating this, and so on. So that's something that's missing today. And after doing all this, they cannot be fully sure whether they have invoked the tools, open source tools, in the right manner.
right,
Are they
right.
using the right bias metrics? Are they using the
Mm.
relevant explainability tools and so on?
Yeah, and I imagine the landscape is pretty complex, right? There's so many different approaches, and there's of course choosing the right approach, but also integrating it into their existing workflow and some amount of infrastructure requirements there to, I imagine, running these things.
Mhm.
So this is it's clear to me this is a complex topic, right? I want to know more about what we launched. We launched Amazon SageMaker Clarify. So could you tell us more about what it is and how we are helping our customers address these challenges?
Yeah, sure. So perhaps I can kind of segue into the slides to also to kind of give a visual feel for what this is. So Amazon SageMaker Clarify is a set of tools to help detect bias in data as well as machine learning models, and to also help understand the model predictions, how the models are behaving and how they're making predictions.
Mm,
uh, so as we discussed, there are a few different challenges that data scientists and other stakeholders face today, both from the perspectives of bias and explainability. I think we largely kind of briefly discussed about this.
mm,
To understand, they want to know if bias has entered the machine learning model.
right.
And machine learning models are off late over the last several years. They're becoming very complex and opaque.
Mm,
So, from regulatory or data science, business angles, the data scientists want to know how these models are behaving.
right.
So
Right.
let's go into what Amazon SageMaker Clarify offers. It provides a few different functionalities. The first is the topmost here listed is it helps detect bias during data preparation. It
Mm,
helps identify imbalances in the data, imbalances in the label distribution
mm,
across different groups, and so forth. For example, let's say that the data is largely about middle-aged people,
mhm,
then if your model is trained on such data, it may not be as accurate for younger people or older people.
right. Right.
So from this angle, what we need to provide is what attributes do we care about? Let's say some an attribute such as age, and then SageMaker Clarify can help identify such imbalances. Next, uh, it will also help check the train model for bias uh,
Mm,
by providing various bias metrics, the degree to which the train model has different predictive behavior for different groups.
mm,
The third is in terms of explanation. It can help the data scientists understand how the model behaves as a whole, in terms of which features are most important for the model.
mm,
Fourth, it can help explain individual predictions. Uh, let's take the example of, let's say, a consumer applied for a loan and the loan was, the model suggests that the loan should be denied. Now the loan officer can understand what features are responsible for the model making this prediction. Is that aligned with their domain expertise? uh,
mm,
is the model making it for the right reasons? Are there any biases during this stage? So that's what we mean by explaining individual predictions. um,
mm,
Next is, let's say the model has been deployed in production. There may be changes in the real world distribution. There may be changes in the real world. So as a result, there could be changes in the bias as well as explainability. Even though the model may have been free of biases, before it was deployed, over period of time, it may develop biases. So at this stage, we help detect such bias that arises. We help provide various types of alerts. You can configure using Amazon CloudWatch and SageMaker Model Monitor to set up such alerts and then take remedial actions. Maybe retrain the model if it is if it is starting to exhibit very undesirable behavior. If the features which were very important early on have changed, maybe the order of importance of features has changed. Maybe it may be a good time to get more data and retrain the model and so on
Right.
and so forth.
I remember the simpler days, Krishna, and I'm sure you do too, when models were very simple. They were linear models, statistical models with strong assumptions and theories behind them. But, we have much more complicated models with, random forests and gradient boosted trees and neural networks, which are far more
Mhm.
accurate, but so much more harder to, identify bias. And from what you said, I can clearly see the difference here. One is on the data part, right? Understanding your data, bias in the data itself, then the model training and the predictions and the importance of these features. And then there's the explainability during the deployment, and not just at the time of deployment, but over time,
Mhm.
when, the distribution may change, data distribution in the real world may change. So this is such a multifaceted problem, and I'm so happy to see we have a capability here that can help address challenges in these different ways. So Krishna, tell us, how can developers start using this today? How can they get started? What tools are we providing them?
Sure. I'll kind of segue into that. Before that, so one final thing I want to add is that in addition to doing all of this
Mhm.
or all these challenges, the data scientists today also have to often provide reports to other stakeholders,
Mm.
maybe compliance teams or other teams within the organization. SageMaker Clarify helps automate generation of such reports for bias as well as the explainability. And with these reports, the data scientists can easily share with other stakeholders within the organization to meet various requirements. So that's all. That's the last one here. So with this background, let's go into how say developers and data scientists can make use of SageMaker Clarify today.
Mm.
As I alluded to earlier, SageMaker Clarify works across the entire machine learning life cycle. It's tightly integrated with SageMaker Studio, the visual IDE for machine learning, as
Which
well as
we'll see in
various
a demo today, right? You're going to
yeah,
show
yes,
us
I'm going to
what this looks
shortly show the demo of
like.
all of this. So first, at the time of data preparation, it is integrated with SageMaker Data Wrangler. So it's
Awesome.
easy to measure different types of bias metrics.
Mm.
Next, likewise, once the model has been trained, it's integrated with all the relevant components so that
Mm.
it can both measure biases of the trained model and also understand which features are most important for
Mm.
the model as a whole. And at this stage, it's integrated with SageMaker experiments so that it's easy to visualize this for both bias and explainability measures. Then you can, for this purpose, you can write a SageMaker processing job. You can, as part of SageMaker processing job, you can integrate bias and explainability computation and get the relevant reports.
Mm.
You can both visualize them through Studio and also save them as standalone reports for wider sharing.
Mm.
Finally, let's say that once the model has been deployed in production, then you can use SageMaker Model Monitor to configure such alerts, to configure when should you get trigger when so under what conditions should you get a trigger related to bias or a trigger related to shift in feature importance.
Mm.
This is kind of nicely integrated with the SageMaker Model Monitor. So with this context, yeah, I can jump into the demo if it is fine. Or
Yeah, Krishna, this is interesting, that we have this integration with all these existing SageMaker capabilities, especially the ones we just launched to, like Data Wrangler. and it's also integrated with existing capabilities with SageMaker processing, hyperparameter tuning. This is awesome, and I'm excited to see the demo. And I think one of the important things that you pointed out, which we'll also see in the demo, is you can generate reports out of this, and that is so important, especially for this capability, because once you detect these, you may want to generate these reports shared with others, for approval process or compliance and whatnot. This is exciting, and I'm excited to take a look at a demo. So, Krishna, whenever you're ready.
Sure. So let's start with each of these components. So let's first I'm going to show yeah, in the how SageMaker Clarify is integrated as part of Data Wrangler. So here, first you need to import your data set. In this case, in the demo, I'm importing a data set from an S3 bucket. This data is called a German credit data set. It's publicly available. It's often used for bias and explainability measurements. So once the data is imported,
So,
then
Krishna, quick question. What sort of data sets are supported today at launch with SageMaker Clarify?
So today we support tabular data sets.
Mm,
So meaning that there are data consisting of columnar data,
mm,
and you can then use such data and measure both the bias as well as explainability on this data.
nice. Okay.
All right. So let me do the following. I'll just walk through the demo and then discuss more questions about the these different
Mm,
components. All right. So let's say next, um, with the data wrangler, you can create different types of analysis.
mm,
Here specifically, we are creating a type of analysis which is a bias report.
mm,
Um, and for this type of analysis, we need to choose first. We need to specify uh, the outcome variable, like label for the data set,
mm,
and also specify what is the predicted value corresponding to the positive outcome. In this case, a good credit equal to 1 is the positive outcome. Next,
mm,
we have to specify the column with respect to which we want to analyze bias. So here I'm specifying age and saying that giving a threshold of 40, meaning that I want to see whether there is any bias against people who are at least 40 years old.
mm,
Then I can select the different bias metrics for which I want to generate the bias report. And in pretty much real time, I have generated the, these different bias measures, and I can also visualize this in this format where I can see the range of each bias metric as well as where the current metric falls. I can also then click on the drop down menu and see more explanations like examples of each of these metrics as well as pointers to technical and white paper if you want to learn more about the metrics and the underlying formulas, underlying math, intuition, and so forth. If needed, you can also visualize this in a table format where all the bias metrics are listed along with the corresponding bias values. Finally,
so,
you can once
Krishna,
you're
this
happy,
is,
uh-huh,
yeah. I,
uh,
yeah, I just want to say this is great that one, it's integrated right in Studio, so user can just see all these right in Studio without
mm,
ever leaving the Studio interface. And
mm.
secondly, not only are you detecting, but you're also providing sort of some guidance there, right, on what to do. This is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. I think that's the important part. Like it's not just a set of metrics, but also like definitions of the metrics,
Mm,
intuition of the metrics. Under what context is it good to apply different metrics and so forth. So all that is there, and then what you can do then is that you can create and save the bias report, and once the bias report is saved you can download it or share with other stakeholders. So next part is next is I'm going to show how to use this as part of a SageMaker processing job.
mm,
So here, the, I'm going to generate both bias and explainability metrics for both a data set and a model. I'm going to use a notebook which is running inside of SageMaker Studio for this
Hmm.
purpose. We are going to use an already pre-trained model and deployed endpoint, and to that we are going to add the bias and explainability related aspects as part of this processing job, and this uses the SageMaker Python SDK. So for this, we had to provide two inputs. So the first is an analysis configuration in the form of a JSON file. This kind of, you can think of it as the various parameters of the algorithm. And then you also point to the data set. And then, as shown here, it generates the bias and explainability into a data set. And you can then read it either in the notebook or also read it through the SageMaker Studio itself through a visual interface. So
Nice.
you can then even download this report separately if needed. Uh, like in this specific example, we see that the class imbalance metric shows up as high, and then just for the purpose of visualizing, you can then visualize this and do see that for this attribute, there's a huge imbalance between the two classes. You can also visualize the feature importances right here, but uh, just note that these are already computed as part of the processing job. I'm just
Hmm.
visualizing is for convenience. So in addition to the visualizing through the notebook, you can also visualize this through SageMaker experiments. So for that, what you need to do is go and
So, Krishna, just to clarify, so what you had on the notebook was us reading the raw data and then creating our own plots and generating. That's one way to visualize and analyze the results. But the other way is to take a look at the auto-generated information that you're showing us, right?
yes, so that's right. So what I showed was there's a processing job, and as part of the processing job, we specify the bias related parameters and the explainability parameters, and then it generates those reports. And now you don't have to go through them in a notebook format. You can instead go to SageMaker experiments and go inside the corresponding trial, and in this case this is the trial component. And you can, once you open that trial, what you see is that you see a tab for the bias and explainability. Like here I'm showing the bias report. So there's a tab for bias report, where again these are the metrics which are computed after the model has been trained, in terms of whether the model is having similar predictive behavior for different groups.
Mm-hmm.
You can also see the which features are most important. That's also like visualized in the model insights tab. So once again, as before, you can then click on this drop down menu. You can see whether you can see the examples. You can also visualize in a table form. You can look at additional information in the technical papers and so forth. So
Nice.
this is
Nice.
kind of the SageMaker experiments integration. Here I have specified two attributes, of age and whether the person is a foreign worker as the attributes to analyze bias for. And you can select either of this and then look at bias with respect to both. So let me just pause here. So far we covered bias analysis during the data preparation as part of SageMaker Data Wrangler. Then we covered bias and explainability as part of SageMaker experiments. Next, I'm going to show how to detect drifts in the bias and explainability for a deployed model. So let's, and for that, to do that, what we need to do is we go to the endpoints here, and we select the endpoint of interest to us. And once it is selected, um, let's see. So once it's selected, you go to the model monitoring configuration page, and here you can first you need to deploy your endpoint and enable data capture on it so
Uh-huh.
that model monitoring can be done. Next, you have to include a job description that includes the bias and explainability metrics.
Mm.
Uh, and once these are specified, you can then visualize through this model explainability and bias drift tabs here. So it's a model explainability tab.
So
You can
Krishna, this is an enhancement to the existing model monitoring capability that's part of SageMaker today, right?
Yes, that's right. So the existing model monitoring capability, meaning the one before SageMaker Clarify launch, did include it already includes the data quality, model
Mhm.
quality tabs in terms of detecting drift in data distribution over time and so on. What we have added is also detecting drift in the model explanations as well as detecting drift in bias over time.
Awesome. So Krishna, we have a couple more minutes left. Anything else you want to show us as part of the capability?
Sure. So as part of this, let me quickly go through this. You can see that which features are most important. Are these importances changing over time? Or some
Mm,
features going up in importance, some going down? Similarly, like you can then look at you can pick an individual feature and look at its importance over time, whether that is changing over time as well.
nice.
So likewise, you can also go into feature importance plots, and you can also look at uh, bias measures, whether the bias is exceeding some threshold, get alerts when that happens, and
Mm,
so on. So I think this kind of yeah, concludes like the demo. And let me also just emphasize that we have several potential use cases of SageMaker Clarify, ranging from regulatory compliance to helping with customer service, internal reporting, and so on.
mm.
And I think that's kind of the power of SageMaker Clarify.
Thanks, Krishna. This was a very helpful overview. This is a complex topic for a lot of people, and you really simplified explaining all the different areas in the machine learning workflow where this is important. All of them data set, bias in the data set, bias in the features. And one of the most interesting thing I found interesting was during deployment and monitoring this over time. I think that's such an important aspect because a lot of what we do is static point in time analysis, but being able to monitor this over time is so important, and I'm so glad we have this capability baked into existing feature, which is model monitoring. So Krishna, thank you so much for joining us, and we have a product page with more information, and we have a blog post which talks about how to do this. And Krishna, you also mentioned there's a technical paper which
Yes.
talks about some of the capabilities that we've added into this service, right?
So all of these are linked from the SageMaker Clarify product page. So I would encourage all of you to experiment with this. And as you have any feedback, please do share the feedback with us. We always look forward to learning how our customers use such tools and look forward to further improving the tools over time. Thank
Awesome.
you again for listening. Hope you make use of SageMaker Clarify and benefit from the bias and explainability functionality.
Thanks, Krishna. And so there you have it. That was Amazon SageMaker Clarify. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for additional streams. With that, take care.
Thank you, everyone.